You want to know something almost poetic about the average man in 2026? He has access to more information than any human being in the history of civilization. More knowledge, more tools, more opportunity, more connectivity, more resources available at the touch of a screen than kings and emperors could have imagined 100 years ago. And he is using it to watch other people live. Not to build, not to learn, not to create or develop or compound or invest. He is using the most powerful information technology ever developed to passively consume the curated highlight reels of people who are doing the things he tells himself he is going to do. And then he puts the phone down and does nothing. And then he picks it up again. And the cycle repeats with the specific rhythm of a man who has found a very comfortable way to feel like he is participating in life while making absolutely no progress in it. This is not a character flaw. I want to be very clear about that. This is a design. The most sophisticated behavioral scientists on Earth, working with billion-dollar budgets and decades of research into human psychology, have engineered the exact environment that keeps the average man exactly where he is. Stimulated enough to stay. Dissatisfied enough to keep scrolling for something better. Never fulfilled enough to put the device down and build. The average man is not struggling because he is weak. He is struggling because he is fighting a war he does not know he is in, against weapons he cannot see, using resources he does not know he has. This video is about that war, and about why the men who are winning it are winning in a way that most people never connect to the actual reason. Welcome to Prime Within. If you are watching this for the first time, you showed up on the right day. Before we go any further, please subscribe right now. Hit that button. The men who stay subscribed to this channel are the men who keep coming back to these ideas in the moments they need them most. And you are going to need this one. Subscribe now. Let's get into it. Cal Newport is a computer science professor at Georgetown University who has spent his career studying something that most people consider obvious, but almost nobody understands deeply: the relationship between how we spend our attention and what our lives actually become. His book Deep Work was published in 2016 and immediately became one of the most important books written about human productivity and excellence in the modern era. His follow-up, Digital Minimalism, went even deeper into the specific mechanisms by which the average person's capacity for meaningful work and meaningful life is being systematically degraded by the technology they carry in their pocket. Newport is not anti-technology. He is not a Luddite advocating for the elimination of smartphones. He is a careful data-driven researcher who looked at what the evidence actually says about how sustained, focused attention affects human performance, and found something that should fundamentally change how every man reading this thinks about his daily life. He found that the ability to perform deep work, to focus without distraction on a cognitively demanding task for extended periods, is becoming simultaneously rarer and more valuable. Rarer because the attention economy is systematically destroying the capacity for sustained focus in the average person. More valuable because the economy increasingly rewards the people who can produce rare and genuinely exceptional results that are only possible through exactly the kind of sustained, deep, undistracted attention that most people can no longer access. In other words, and this is Newport's central argument, the average man is struggling today not because opportunity has dried up, not because the system is impossibly stacked against him, but because he has lost, through no single dramatic decision, but through the accumulated effect of 1,000 small daily choices, the one cognitive capacity that separates the men who produce exceptional work from the men who produce average work. The ability to think deeply, sustained, without reaching for the phone. Here is what the average man's day actually looks like. And I want you to be honest with yourself as I describe it, because the recognition is going to be uncomfortable. He wakes up before his feet hit the floor, sometimes before he has fully opened his eyes. He checks his phone, not for anything specific, just the reflex, the immediate return to the stimulation stream after the 6 to 8 hour interruption of sleep. Email, social media, news, sports scores, whatever the algorithm has decided he should see first. By the time he has been awake for 20 minutes, his attention has been fragmented across 15 different inputs, none of them chosen, all of them served to him by systems whose primary objective is to keep him engaged. And here is what Newport's research reveals about what this does to the brain. It is not neutral. It is not simply a way of starting the day. It is a calibration. Every morning, before any meaningful work has been attempted, the brain is being calibrated toward distraction, trained to expect frequent, varied, low-effort stimulation, trained to be unable to tolerate the specific kind of extended, demanding, undistracted attention that producing genuinely exceptional work requires. Newport calls this the shallowing of the mind. Not stupidity, not laziness, a specific, measurable degradation of the capacity for sustained cognitive engagement. The man who spends his first hour consuming fragmented content has made his brain significantly less capable of the focused, deep thinking required to produce anything of genuine value for the rest of that day. Because attention, like a muscle, responds to the patterns of use it is given. And a muscle that spends its first hour doing dozens of tiny effortless movements is not prepared for the one sustained, heavy lift that produces real strength. And then he goes to work. And at work, he responds to emails in the gaps between emails. He attends meetings that interrupt whatever momentum he was building. He checks his phone during the meetings. He multitasks because multitasking feels productive, and because the alternative, single-minded, sustained focus on one demanding task feels boring in the specific way that anything genuinely difficult always feels in comparison to constant stimulation. He comes home. He eats. He watches content for 2 to 3 hours. He scrolls for another hour. He tells himself he will start properly tomorrow. He goes to sleep having consumed an enormous amount and produced very little. And the next day the pattern repeats with the specific consistency of a man who has never examined it. Here is the part that most content about the average man's struggle gets completely wrong. The problem is not work ethic. The average man works. He is busy. He is occupied. He is, by his own measurement and by society's measurement, doing the things he is supposed to be doing. He shows up. He puts in the hours. He is not sitting idle in a field somewhere watching clouds. The problem is what Newport calls pseudo-productivity, the performance of being busy that substitutes for the actual production of valuable work. The emails answered, the meetings attended, the notifications responded to, the content consumed, the social media managed. All of it creates the feeling of activity without the specific, compounding, genuinely valuable output that comes from sustained deep work. And this distinction between being busy and being productive in the deep, genuine, compounding sense is the most important distinction most men never make, because busyness is visible and comfortable and easy to justify. Deep work is invisible from the outside, uncomfortable from the inside, and extremely difficult to justify in the moment because the results are not immediately apparent. Newport gives an example in Deep Work that I want to give you directly because it illustrates the distinction better than anything I could construct. He describes a study of violinists at the Berlin Academy of Music, a study that has since become one of the most cited pieces of research in the science of expertise. The researchers divided the violinists into 3 groups. The best, the ones on track for careers as soloists. The good, the ones likely to end up in professional orchestras. The rest, the ones who would probably become music teachers. They found that the single variable that most reliably distinguished the elite performers from the rest was not talent, not the number of hours practiced. It was the number of hours spent in deliberate, focused, undistracted, cognitively demanding practice, what they called deliberate practice, and what Newport calls the musical equivalent of deep work. The best violinists averaged 4 hours per day of this kind of focused work. The rest averaged significantly less. And critically, the rest filled the gap with more practice, but practice that was less focused, less demanding, less deliberately structured to push the edges of their capability. The elite performers were not working harder in terms of total time. They were working harder in terms of cognitive demand per hour, and the compounding effect of that higher cognitive demand, sustained over years, produced a gap in performance that was virtually impossible for the others to close through any amount of additional casual practice. That principle does not live only in music. It lives in every field of genuine excellence, and it is the explanation for why the average man, who works, who is busy, who puts in the hours, still cannot explain why his efforts are not producing the results he believes they should. Now, I want to connect this to something that most men in this audience care deeply about, and that nobody is connecting to Newport's work: the relationship between depth of focus and attractiveness to women. This is not a connection Newport makes explicitly, but it is a connection that follows directly from everything he discovered about what deep work produces in a man. The man who has developed genuine depth through years of focused, sustained, demanding engagement with a craft, a skill, a business, a creative pursuit, carries something that is immediately recognizable to other people and completely impossible to manufacture. Newport calls it the craftsman's confidence, the specific self-possession of a man who has invested so much deliberate effort in becoming genuinely excellent at something that his sense of his own value does not depend on anyone else's assessment of it. He knows what he is capable of, not because someone told him, because he has watched himself grow in capability over years of demanding, uncomfortable, focused work. Because he has the specific evidence, internal, private, completely independent of external validation, that he is someone who can produce things of genuine value. And that self-knowledge sits in him differently from the self-confidence of a man who is simply telling himself he is valuable. It is grounded in something real, in the accumulated weight of genuinely exceptional work done over years. Women feel that difference, the difference between performed confidence and earned confidence, in the way anyone with genuine aesthetic sensitivity feels the difference between a copy and an original. The copy might look right. The original has something the copy does not, something in the texture of it, something that communicates, before any analysis, that this is real. The man with the craftsman's confidence does not need to announce himself. He does not need to manage your impression of him. He is not running a constant background calculation of how he is coming across. He is simply there, in possession of something genuine, built through years of depth, that his presence broadcasts whether he intends it to or not. And that presence, rooted not in performance but in genuine, hard-won, deeply developed competence, is the most naturally commanding and genuinely attractive quality a man can develop, because it cannot be faked, because it takes years to build, because it is, in the attention economy that is degrading most men's capacity for exactly the work that produces it, becoming rarer every single year. Please take a moment right now to subscribe to Prime Within. I say this every video, and I mean it every time. The men who subscribe are the men who keep coming back to these frameworks when the motivation has faded and the clarity is needed most. Hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. We do this every week. Subscribe now, and let's get into the most important section of this video. Newport's solution in digital minimalism is one that most people hear and immediately dismiss as too extreme, and in dismissing it, miss the entire point. He suggests what he calls a digital declutter, a 30-day period in which you step back from all optional technologies and evaluate each one from scratch before reintroducing it. Not elimination forever. A deliberate pause followed by a conscious, value-based decision about what each technology actually contributes to your life versus what it costs in attention and cognitive capacity. Most people hear this and think, I cannot do that. My job requires me to be connected. My social life would suffer. I would miss things. And Newport's response to that, and it is the most important response in the entire book, is, notice what you just did. You immediately generated reasons why you cannot reduce your engagement with technology. You did not evaluate the claim. You did not consider the evidence. You did not ask whether the things you would miss are actually more valuable than the capacity for deep work and genuine presence that you would recover. You simply generated resistance. That resistance, Newport argues, is not rational. It is addiction, the specific neurochemical, dopamine-driven addiction that the attention economy has engineered in you. The same addiction that makes the average man reach for his phone 1,700 times per day, that makes the gap between any two moments of stimulation feel physically intolerable, that has made the experience of simply being present with a person, with a task, with your own thoughts, feel like deprivation rather than the baseline of a genuinely lived life. The average man is struggling today not because the world has become more difficult. In many ways it has become easier. He is struggling because the specific cognitive and emotional capacities that difficulty used to build in men, the ability to sit with discomfort, to sustain focus, to tolerate the absence of stimulation, to think slowly and deeply rather than quickly and shallowly, are being systematically eroded by the environment he lives in without replacement. And the men who are not struggling, who are building, producing, attracting, compounding, are not superhuman. They are not extraordinarily gifted. They are men who have deliberately or by design protected the capacities that the average man is passively surrendering. They have made the specific, countercultural, genuinely difficult choice to be less available to the attention economy and more available to the work that actually matters. Let me tell you about two men, and this time I am going to tell you the story through a single hour, because the comfort zone and the attention economy both live in the hour, not in the year. The first man, call him Marcus, has 45 minutes between finishing work and making dinner. He sits down. He picks up his phone. He tells himself He is just going to check in quickly. 22 minutes later, he has not checked in. He has consumed. He has seen 14 clips of varying entertainment value, checked 3 social media platforms, watched someone else's workout, seen a news headline that briefly elevated his anxiety before being replaced by the next headline and produced exactly nothing. He puts the phone down feeling slightly hollow in the way that only happens after consuming a large amount of very little. He has 23 minutes left. He starts something small, gets interrupted by a notification, puts the phone in his pocket, but leaves it on, finishes nothing, goes to make dinner. The second man, call him Jerome, has the same 45 minutes. He puts his phone in a drawer in another room, not forever. For 45 minutes, he sits down and opens the thing he is working on, the side project, the course, the writing, the planning document for the business he is building. For the first 7 minutes, it feels slightly wrong. His hands want the phone. His mind generates the specific restlessness of a brain that has been trained toward constant stimulation and is experiencing its absence as a kind of mild withdrawal. He stays with it. Minute 8, minute 9, and then, the way this always goes for the man who is building the deep work muscle, something shifts. The restlessness quiets. The engagement deepens. The work starts to pull him rather than requiring him to push. 45 minutes later, he has produced something. Not everything, but something real. Something that will still exist tomorrow. Something that compounds. Newport would describe the difference between Marcus and Jerome not as a difference in willpower or discipline in the dramatic sense. He would describe it as a difference in environment design and habit architecture. Jerome did not resist the phone through superhuman self-control. He put it in a different room. He removed the friction of staying connected and replaced it with the friction of disconnecting. And that single environmental change, requiring physical movement to access distraction, was enough to tip the balance between consumption and production for a man whose intention was always to produce. The average man is not struggling because he lacks intention. He is struggling because he has not designed his environment to support his intentions. Because the path of least resistance in the modern world runs directly through the attention economy and directly away from the depth that produces exceptional work, exceptional health, exceptional relationships, and exceptional financial outcomes. And changing that path, physically, structurally, deliberately, is not a dramatic transformation. It is a series of small environmental decisions that collectively redirect the current of his daily life away from the shallows and toward the depth where everything he actually wants is built. Here is the framework I want you to take out of this video, not as inspiration, as a specific plan of action. Newport's work points to 4 specific changes that the average man can make today without additional resources, without special circumstances, that will begin to rebuild the cognitive capacity for depth that the attention economy has been quietly eroding. The first is what Newport calls scheduling deep work, not hoping it happens, not waiting for the motivated morning when it feels natural, scheduling it the way you schedule a meeting, a specific block of time, even 30 minutes, even 20, that is protected from everything else. Phone in another room. Notifications off. One task. The scheduling transforms it from a desire into a commitment. And commitments, unlike desires, have a structural reason to be honored. The second is what he calls embracing boredom. This sounds counterintuitive, but is perhaps the most important cognitive practice in the entire book. Newport argues that the ability to tolerate boredom, to sit with the absence of stimulation without immediately reaching for relief, is the foundation of the capacity for deep work. Because deep work is boring in the beginning, before the engagement deepens, before the flow arrives, there is always a period of friction that feels like boredom. The man who has been trained by constant stimulation to treat boredom as a problem to be solved will always break before the engagement deepens. The man who has practiced tolerating boredom, who has sat with it deliberately, who has let it pass without reaching for the phone, has built the specific neurological capacity to stay in the work until the work gets good. The third is what Newport calls quitting social media, or at minimum, dramatically restructuring the role it plays. Not because social media is inherently evil, but because it is competing with your most limited resource, your attention, and winning that competition at enormous cost to your capacity for depth. The average social media user spends 2 to 5 hours per day on platforms that are designed to produce maximum engagement with minimum depth. That time, redirected toward even one deeply meaningful skill or project, compounds into something genuinely significant within 12 to 18 months. The question is not whether you can afford to reduce social media. It is whether you can afford not to. The fourth is what Newport calls draining the shallows. Identifying the low-value, high-frequency tasks in your daily life that consume time and attention without producing genuine value, and either eliminating them, batching them into a single daily block, or delegating them. Every minute spent on email that could have been handled in a daily 30-minute block is a minute not available for the work that actually changes your trajectory. Every small task managed in real time rather than batched is a context switch that costs, according to Newport's research, an average of 23 minutes of recovery time before genuine focus is restored. I want to bring this home now, with the most important thing I can say to the man who has been watching this video and feeling the specific, slightly uncomfortable recognition of seeing his own daily patterns described accurately. The average man is not struggling today because the world is unfair. It has always been unfair. It has always been harder for some than for others. The men who built extraordinary things in previous generations did not have easy circumstances. They had a world that had not yet engineered the specific, targeted, neurochemical assault on human attention that the modern man navigates every day without a map. The struggle is real, but it is also solvable, not through superhuman effort, not through dramatic sacrifice, through the specific, deliberate, countercultural choice to protect the one resource that the entire attention economy is designed to extract from you without your conscious permission. Your attention. Protect your attention, and you protect your capacity for depth. Protect your depth, and you protect your capacity to produce exceptional work. Protect your capacity to produce exceptional work, and you build the competence, the confidence, the financial stability, and the genuine presence that changes every relationship in your life, including the one with the woman you want, the colleagues you want to impress, the man you see in the mirror every morning. Cal Newport ends deep work with a line that I want to give you as the final word today. He writes that deep work is not a productivity trick. It is a commitment to the idea that the things that make a life meaningful, mastery, genuine contribution, deep human connection, are only available to those who are willing to do the difficult, increasingly rare work of going deep. The average man is not going deep The environment he lives in is engineered to make sure he does not. And the men who are not average, who are building, attracting, compounding, and living fully, are the men who have looked at that environment and made a different choice. Make the different choice today, not tomorrow, not after the next scroll. Right now, close one app, put the phone across the room, open the thing you have been meaning to work on. Do 20 minutes of something real. 20 minutes today becomes 40 minutes tomorrow. 40 minutes becomes the habit. The habit becomes the competence. The competence becomes the life. Start today. And before you do, subscribe to Prime Within. Hit that bell. Share this with one man who is caught in the shallow end and does not yet know there is a deep end to swim to. We will see you next week. Master yourself first. Build your legacy.